Hey guys, headed home from a nice ride back to Smyrna, and I just thought of something. I thought I'd tell you a little anecdote about my dad. When his health got to the point where, when I say his health, when his knees got to the point where he really couldn't get around his house that he'd been in for 52 years, the house that I was born and raised in. Well, I wasn't born in it, but I was raised in it. He finally got around to selling that house. He moved into an assisted care facility called the Carriage Club in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, he did not move. It's called assisted living, but he was not in that section. He was still, his health was still good. He just had problems getting around. So he had an apartment on the grounds and looked after himself. He fed himself. He did take advantage of the facilities. They had a really nice restaurant. They had a bank. They had a little grocery store there. He didn't even have to go outside. He could do anything. He had a barber. Didn't need to do anything outside, so he could stay there all the time. And when he got to the point where he couldn't really get around well, and he didn't feel like he could drive much anymore, he stayed there quite a bit. Well, he had one of these little power chairs. You know, we call it a hover round, scooter chair, whatever you want to call it. And he would zip-de-doo all around the place. He was a widower. He'd been a widower for a while, and he a little bit of a flirt, and he probably had 30 or 40 girlfriends there that were, you know, he's like 89. They're all in their late 80s and 90s, and they just want somebody to sit and eat lunch with, maybe come over and watch a movie. That's pretty much the extent of a relationship when you're almost 90 and with bad knees. And so, but he had a buddy. There are not a lot of guys at these homes. It's about 20 or 30 females to every male. And you got to figure some of the males are married, because a lot of these are couples apartments. And so they're hooked up and not in the mix. But one of the other guys that was there, gosh, I'm going to mess up. Oh boy, look at the traffic. I'm going to mess up his pronunciation. I want to say Werber. I can't remember his first name, but it was Werber. I think it's W-E-R-B-E-R, or I know it wasn't Weber. It was Werber. He was a gosh, how old was he? He would have been almost. He was in his late 90s. He was like 5 or 6 years older than my dad, at least at the time. I think I've got to be right around there somewhere. And but Mr. Werber's claim to fame was he had been a professional baseball player. He played for the Yankees at one point, and he played for the Red Sox. Well, there was somebody else that played for one of those two teams the same time he did, and that was a guy called Babe Ruth. He was the last living person who had ever played with Babe Ruth, and he wrote a book, and I'll try to find a link to the book and post it, maybe at the end, a picture of it. It's really fascinating. He was around to see it all. I mean, he started with Babe Ruth, and he was a good player. I want to say he was a third baseman or shortstop, I'm not sure, but he had a terrific batting average. You'll have to check out his batting average. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it wasn't just that he played with Babe Ruth. He was a hell of a ball player. And he played for a lot of different teams. And he was around to see Jackie Robinson. I think he was there I think he was still playing when Jackie Robinson went into baseball. He wasn't real happy about that. He said there's a league for African Americans. He didn't use the word African Americans. He said there's a league for them and there's a league for us. And but he didn't play much longer after that, if he was even still playing at the time. And to be honest, that was a sentiment back then of a lot of ball players. There were very few players that were happy to see Jackie Robinson start playing professional baseball. But anyway, let all that aside. Here, Mr. Werber is one of these 1 men to every 40 or so women. And he had diabetes at this stage in his life, and he literally, his legs have been cut off above the knee from diabetes. And he's still being chased. He's almost 100 years. I think he made it to 100. I think my sister kept up with some of the other people that we met there where my dad was living there. And I think he made it over 100 years old before he finally passed away. And he was cool to talk to. He's a real nice guy. Somewhere I have an autographed copy of his book. I don't know where it is, but somewhere I do. I'm not big on autographs. I've never really understood the appeal of an autograph, but I know he enjoyed doing it for me, doing it for my dad. He was I'd say in his last year of life, he was my dad's best friend. And they would eat lunch together a lot of times when they could find a table where the two of them could sit together that wasn't just covered up with little old ladies. And I'll tell you a trick my dad used to do. The first year that he was there, I think he was there 3 or 4 years. The first year he was there, he was kind of shy and he just wanted to be left alone, so he would just stay in his apartment most of the time. But by the end, he said he would pull this trick. He would leave his keys in the door and shut the door and go inside. And he said, without fail, a short time later, one of his ladies would walk by and come in with his keys and go, "Walter, you left your keys in the door again." And he would just smile. And they would sit and visit for a while. So he was pretty cagey in his old age. But I asked him once, he had a long-time girlfriend after my mother passed away. I think maybe 7 or so years after she passed away, he started seeing a friend of his that he'd known, that both my mom and he had known for years. And they were just friends, somebody to pass the time with, to eat supper with, he could drive and she couldn't very well, but she could walk, so they were a perfect pair. He'd drive her to the doctor or drive her to the drugstore, and she'd go in and get the prescription, or she'd go in and get groceries, and he'd stay in the car and he'd drive her home. She had a macular degeneration of the eyes, so she was going blind. But she stayed with him a long time, but eventually that broke off. And kind of forget why I was telling that story. But anyway, oh, that's what it was. I asked him one time, they were pretty hot and heavy there for a long time. I mean, that was his main squeeze. He didn't see anybody else, and from what I know, she didn't either. And I asked him once, I said, "Dad, are you ever going to make her an honest woman?" And he looked at me and he laughed. He said, "Oh, hell no." And I said, "Well, why not? Don't you love her?" And he says, "Oh, she's a great girl." He says, "I love spending time with her." But he said, "You got to realize, one of these days, I'm going to be standing at the pearly gates, and your mother's going to be standing there looking at me. And how the hell am I going to explain that?" And we both had a good laugh over that. And I agree, there is no way my mother would understand that at all. Oh well, just thought I'd mention that. I'm gonna have to cut this off because, golly, these tires on these trucks and cars are just amazingly loud on this concrete. You guys take care. Talk to you again. Bye-bye.